I'm ready.
All right. Welcome to Lunchtime Live with Colton and Brandon. And to all the masses who are on right now, we're super excited and grateful. Thank you for being on. Last time we did this is monthly. Last time we did it, we talked about generative art and a lot of that type of stuff, more along the graphic design. And we'll get into that a little bit more, dial into it a little bit more. But what we wanted to talk about today was just generally how we use a lot of the tools that are coming out right now. Again, I think we mentioned how there's this rush to create all these tools. And what's the big deal with AI? A lot's the big deal, especially right now. I recently read something from Sam Altman and kind of what his thoughts were. He's done a lot of interviews and has a lot of publicity around OpenAI and all of that. But he talks about what his intentions were. And ultimately, I think the intention is supercomputer, right? Which I don't know how that's going to work, if that's going to be achieved. But along the way, something interesting I thought he talked about was how he let all this out, kind of threaded it out slowly, so that we could prepare for the future. Because I think there's a lot of things coming up, and a lot of the tools that we're able to use now, it's going to grow exponentially, and the stuff that we're going to be able to do, we can't even fathom right now. All the way from, a lot of questions I get is AI going to take over? That's the extreme end to, is it going to take jobs? Of course, but is it going to offer more opportunities? And I believe the answer is yes. So, and that's some of the stuff we talked about last time. So we'll kind of get into some of this and talk about what's up and what could happen. I think more than anything, it's really about how can we use it today in the form that it is, because there's so many opportunities to use AI, from coding to graphics to audio and visual type stuff. So we just want to jump in and kind of figure that out. So yeah, let Colton kind of kick us off here.
That's awesome. Yeah. This month we're going to be kind of diving into AI even more. Typically with these webinars, we try to jump from topic to topic. Whether that's like building a QA team, or handling your product, or working with customers, really kind of anything within like the software development space is where we like to hang out. We are sticking around AI just a little bit longer than our usual topics. We've hit on it a couple times already, and we'll probably continue to hit on it a little bit more, just because there's been a lot of requests to continue to dive into it. It's obviously the hot button item at the moment. AI, everyone's talking about it. It's even to the point where if someone like my dad, who's not in touch with technology, is probably is using it and is familiar, or at least aware of what ChatGPT is. Might not use it, but are aware of it, which is a pretty big deal. When you get dads and grandpas, Yeah. If you get your grandpa asking you about it, it's a pretty big deal when it comes to technology. But yeah, anyways, this month, we want to kind of go another layer deeper in AI. We thought it would be helpful to really just talk about some of the AI tools that we use here at Zibtek, whether that be on project management, sales, design, marketing, on the software development side, QA, DevOps, all of those things. We can do some research and compile it. That's obviously always helpful, but sometimes, what we've always found is that, it's real world use cases that's really the most helpful, right? If we could sit and talk about, hey, this is the tool I use day in and day out, and this is how it's helped me. This is the pros, these are the cons. Working with professionals in their spaces, talk about the tools that they like. We've found that that's more beneficial than me either plugging into ChatGPT or doing a Google and pulling a list of tools and giving it to you. That's something someone can do on their own time pretty quickly. We'd rather be able to give you some real world use cases and kind of talk about tools we use and how they help us out. So with that being said, jumping into just a few common items that Brandon and I use on our day-to-day. is one. Grammarly is a really popular one. I'm sure a lot of people use it. Right, it can be used as a tool to help you write things, even like autocomplete, or more typically what it started off as, and what I personally use it for is just those grammar mistakes, right? If you're writing emails all day, I've obviously, gone to school, I know how to write, I know how to spell, but you're writing emails all day, you're writing these quick messages to people. You can just fly through emails. Now I don't take the time to stop and like really slowly go through and write and check my grammar. The beauty is I can just spam out an email, run that check real quick, identify what needs to be adjusted, what doesn't. Grammarly is still not perfect. Sometimes it gives me suggestions that don't make sense, but it's kind of just a proof where you're having somebody, look at all your emails, make sure it makes sense. You don't have a spelling error in there. It's just really important nowadays, in a professional setting. Especially nowadays with AI and so many of these tools out there, there's really no excuse to have grammar issues or spelling mistakes. There's all these AI tools out there. So if you're trying to write, especially like on the sales side with where Brandon's at, if he sends an email with a bunch of spelling errors, that's not going to instill a lot of confidence in the client. If we can't figure out how to plug a tool in like Grammarly and catch some spelling errors, how are we going to make sure to catch, coding errors or, items on, having to do with the contract, those types of items. So those tools are just helpful to, write a good email, make sure your grammar is correct. I wish I could have one for when I'm speaking that would correct some of the things I say, because I'm sure I don't always speak correctly, just grammatically.
It's how I talk through you and eat through it.
Yeah, some sort of siphon to push it through. Next one that we use quite a lot within our meetings is Fireflies. Fireflies is a really cool tool that lets you get transcripts from your meetings. So we just plug it in. I can join as an attendee, and it will grab a recording and the transcript of your meeting. Really helpful for, let's say, you have like a really long meeting, sometimes some of these more technical meetings where we're talking about either, some sort of programming or code, or we're talking about a product, and maybe you've got an hour-long meeting, we've talked about 100 different things. You need to go back and say, oh, there was that section where we talked about this certain feature, and I need to go write a ticket for that feature, but it was somewhere in the middle, I think. I don't know. So now what I have to do is what I'd have to do in the past, at least, is I'd have to just kind of skim through that meeting and try to find that section, or hope I took really good notes. The nice thing with a tool like Fireflies is it gives me a full transcript. So now I can just Command F or Control F, depending on what system you're on. I can Command F and find that section, right? So if I'm like, oh, I was looking for, the sign-in feature, I could just Command F, do sign in, look for that word, find it in the transcript, find that section. That's the way that I use it specifically. Next, another tool that I use a little bit more recently, just trying to dive into AI more and more, is a tool called, I actually don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Denigma, I believe is what the way it's pronounced, Denigma AI. Basically, in a nutshell, what this tool does is it translates code to plain English, which has been extremely helpful for me as either a project manager or product owner. It basically allows me to grab like a function or a class or basically a section of code. I drop it in, and it just, in very plain summarized English, it tells me what this code's doing, how it's working, kind of what the purpose of it is. I do have some development experience. I typically can read code. But since we do everything kind of under the sun, we do, Python, C#, C++, Node, kind of every language you could think of. Sometimes it's hard for me to look at some of the code that developers have coded out and understand what they're doing or what this function is doing, or even make sure that, if somebody's asking for a code file, I'm passing it along, making sure I actually have the right code. So this tool lets me just throw it in there. It breaks it down for me really easily. And that helps me understand the code and what the devs are doing. And then it saves time. I don't have to bother them every time if I'm going through the code or if I'm going through a commit and I don't understand, what that code is actually accomplishing. Instead of me bothering a developer and taking them away from, their current task, I can just throw it in the tool and use it that way. Next, a couple other items that aren't necessarily AI tools, but have been AI enhanced, which I'm sure most projects nowadays, or most software tools have some sort of AI component plugged into it nowadays to kind of stay with the times. I use Loom personally to do screen recordings. This is really helpful for clients and then for creating tickets and tasks for the developers. Loom has always been a screen recording tool with no real AI plugged into it. Now it's been AI enhanced. There's a couple little things it does. One of the things it does for me on a daily basis that I like is it creates like a quick little title. Before, what it used to do is just like grab my name or the tab I was on when I did the recording. Now what it does is it actually grabs kind of the first initial few sentences I speak about and creates a summary and titles it that way. It's a small thing, but it saves me, that 5-10 seconds of creating a nice title and thinking about it. It just throws it in there for me, and it pretty much always hits it right on the head. And then lastly, before I kick it over to Brandon here to go over some of the tools he uses, we use ClickUp internally here. That is our ticketing system. Again, not an AI tool at its core. It's a ticketing system just like Jira or Trello, but it has also been AI enhanced. It does a lot of like autocomplete and suggestions. It's a little bit more on the writing side, but very, very helpful. We put a lot of documentation inside of our projects. So within our ticketing system, we actually have documents. That's whether it's like a PRD or maybe it's a breakdown of a feature in an epic. Sometimes we'll have these lengthy documents, and one of the really cool AI plugins that they have is like a summarization tool. So if I have a PRD that goes over a client, their product, the goals of their project, the objectives, timelines, puts out the resources, tech stack, platforms, goes over all the features, requirements. There's about 1 million things that could go on that document. There's this cool little tool that ClickUp's added that's just called Summarize. I just click a button at the very top of the document. It takes that probably like anywhere, from like a couple page to like 20-page document, and we'll summarize it in a paragraph or two, and really just kind of takes the highlights, plugs it in. Not perfect, but what I've been able to do is it saves me a lot of time, and it saves a lot of people on my team's time. Instead of having to read through this whole document to get a great grasp of what the project is, they can read that summary at the beginning, get a pretty solid idea. Typically, it takes a little bit of tweaking and adjustments for me. It kind of misses the point a little bit here and there, but it gets rid of, it takes care of about 90% of that work, and then I can just go clean it up and then I'm done. So it's been really helpful. Those are my day-to-day tools. I don't know, Brandon.
No, that's excuse me. That's interesting because I've heard something recently where it might have even been Sam Altman that said it, but a lot of these jobs are going to be taken are actually white collar jobs. So things that people are doing, like if you look at attorneys and writers and people like that typically do the stuff that no one else can do, and now all of a sudden these chatbot, these chat GPTs and all these, they're now taking over. So what does the future look like? And so things that are more tangible, those can't be, like for instance, as an artist, you can't really, I guess you could create a bot that paints, and eventually they'll probably get to that point. So where does that leave us? Some of the things that I've used currently or am using currently within sales. So we have a team in Bangalore, India, and they do a lot of our SDR work, which is basically the beginning part of sales. So they're reaching out to customers and they're on the phones, they're setting appointments for our team. And then when they get an appointment set, our account executives take that through to close. And so the tool that they're using currently, which is an Indian-based dialer, which is called Dupti. And a lot of these dialers these days are actually using AI to predict the call. So it'll either go through the call, and once the call is connected, it actually tells that person, well, this is this is an actual individual or an IVR or whatever. Or it can go a little bit further and actually have the conversation and do a little bit of the robotics there, which some people detest, but it's very effective. So that has actually created a lot of production for us, being able to go through literally thousands more calls per week or per month than we've ever been able to do. So just on the sales side, AI can make a huge impact. If you get into, some of I guess the CRMs, and we've built our own CRM, but adding that AI functionality, there's just a ton that it can do: predict, create meetings, and remind you to set up another meeting and follow-ups. We've actually got within our system, we have sequences. And so if you start looking at doing sequences, you could actually write an entire script for that sequence on some of these AI chatbots. So that's something that I've used a lot. And then also marketing. So if you look at marketing, it's extremely smart for that type of thing. In fact, I think that was one of the primary means when they created some of this stuff was, because it's all of that data was text data that they input, especially with OpenAI. And so it's very familiar with how to compare and contrast certain things. So if I'm writing a marketing sequence, I can do that very simply in a matter of minutes, and line that up exactly how I want to, and it'll just go and create all that stuff. So some of the things kind of on the art side, the generative art, if you look at three of the main ones right now, Midjourney, this is one that actually goes through Discord. So you have to be on Discord and be a member of Discord to actually use it. And I think right now it's really hard to get in because I've seen that they're kind of keeping people out, and for whatever reason, I guess you have to have paid subscriptions. So Midjourney is a great option. It's extremely detailed generative art. Once you throw in what they call your idea or whatever, it goes in and it creates a quad. So 4 different images of the one that you suggested. So, this is speaking out loud what you want and putting that in there, and that will generate some sort of image. Some of them are geared more toward the image versus a layout. A lot of people are looking for layouts for social media or marketing campaigns. So it has that ability to do either one of those. OpenAI actually has DALL-E, which is a very popular one. And that kind of gets me into the web browsers and the search engines and all that's going in on that. And obviously with OpenAI in 2019, Microsoft made a big $1 billion play on that one. And now I think they upped the ante to like 13 billion, just to see what it could do. So now if you go in, and this is another thing that I use, I've not been traditionally a fan of Microsoft. I'm more on the Apple side of things, but I've actually jumped over even from Chrome to start using Microsoft Edge. So what Edge did was include Bing as a search engine. And so now you can go in and there's a few really interesting things that they've done. Number one, it's free, and everything else that I've looked at, Stable Diffusion, which is also for high quality images. I think their fees are from $9 to $150, depending on if you're personal or business use. And then even a few others are charging per image. But what Bing has done and Edge is you can go in and you can search for something, and it'll actually give you information based on that search. So that web page that you're on, it gives you a feed of whatever you're asking for. And then on their sidebar, on the right side, they actually have things like, it just slipped my mind what it's called. Oh, Designer, which is actually for layouts. But there's a piece in there that's actually included the DALL-E version, which will allow you to create an image. You can select that image and then do whatever you want with the image. So from start to finish, your whole marketing application could be, I create an image, then I put it in a layout, and then I use it for social media, which is super important. Like if you look at what Canva's doing right now, Canva's another one is very popular and starting to use that. People are using Canva right now because it creates images for them. Well, this is going to be able to create original images that then create an entire layout for you. And then there's things like, obviously they've incorporated the chat GPT 4. So they're using that just as a basic search function for, let's see, creating either compositions, so writing compositions. So if you're trying to write something, we've done tons of stuff with just writing sales scripts to coming up with new concepts. And I've actually recently, I've asked a couple of questions like, if I'm doing A or B, what's going to happen with that? And what we have to understand about, it's not, the search is not going out and asking every single web page. That's the way we think right now, because we think it's going to go out and it's going to search all of these web pages for the information. But what they started talking about was it's actually already built that knowledge base. So just like our brains, we don't have to go out and go to a library to find specific some things, but some things we already have in our mind already there ready to go, which is amazing. Like, I don't understand that kind of layered neural layers and all that stuff that they're doing, but it's really interesting. So there's a pause that you'll get from a lot of these bots, and it's actually built in because I think we feel like it needs time to think, and it doesn't. It actually, all that information is automatically there. They're just like trying to fool us with this little pause. Like, oh, it's thinking. It's not thinking, it already knows. So when it goes out and it searches for questions like that and does a lot of compare and contrast, it gives you some very good answers, some very accurate answers. So that's some of the stuff that I've been using. There's a ton of apps out there.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's yeah. I mean, so that pretty well covers the items that Brandon and I use day to day. Really on like the management, product side, sales, marketing side. I do work with our developers day to day. And I've talked to them about the AI tools that they use. Some of the tools that they use that I wanted to go over today. I can't speak to it as much as we've probably spoken about some of these other tools, as I don't use it day in and day out. But I can say that many of our developers use these tools and can attest that they're very helpful, very useful. We're trying to actually get it down to a couple tools that we can use consistently across the teams. So there's consistency. Obviously, if you've got the team using just a handful of tools, we can refine that, build processes around that, instead of just everybody out there in the ether. But since AI is so early, it's so new, there's so many new tools, we also don't want to limit ourselves, right? And just say, here's the tool we're going to use and that's it. Because there's always, new people taking the lead and have specific use cases that they use it for. So where they can be more helpful. So jumping into some of those, one that I've spoken about before is GitHub Copilot. I'd say kind of in the coding space, it's probably the biggest one right now. It's the developer's version of ChatGPT. It's kind of the one everyone knows and is probably used in some way. Another one is Blackbox. That is an autocomplete tool. And actually, one thing I will mention is pretty much all of these have several kind of subcomponents to them. Like they all probably started with some sort of core function, whether it's autocomplete, suggestions, really just being a chat bot, testing. They all kind of have a thing that they started with, and then now they're breaking down these kind of sub categories that they have separate pieces for, kind of plugins for. Next is Tab 9, kind of just another enhancement tool, auto completion for developers. Next is Replit. I hope I'm saying that one right. Replit, again, is a good example where they have a lot of these sub products that they have. One that a lot of our developers use is Ghostwriter, created by Replit. It's an IDE chatbot. So it's basically ChatGPT, but it's built directly into the IDE, and that allows the developers to, maybe they hit a block, they have a question, basically imagine, a developer is writing code and they think, I would like to use ChatGPT for help on something instead of having to jump out and go to a browser, go to ChatGPT. They could use this right inside the IDE, and it's again just more catered to specifically developers and development problems rather than just the whole world. And then next is Codium. This is a code analyzing and testing tool. One way it's really helpful is like unit tests for developers. So not necessarily a QA piece, but developers, whenever they're writing functions, they should put unit tests in to test it, make sure it's actually functioning the way they need it to. This tool can really quickly not only give you suggestions and help you write unit tests, but just speed up the process. Next, one of the tools that our team uses for CI/CD is Deep Code. It's kind of just a code evaluation tool. Kind of evaluates the tool, looks for any issues within the code that's going to break something right if you deploy the code at that point. It helps us speed up deployments and speed up how quickly we can deploy and how many deployments we can do, so we can again deploy in small increments. The smaller the increment, the less prone you are to have mistakes. So we like to follow that CI/CD method. And then really jumping down, we don't get too crazy into data. We're not a big data company. We don't deal with too much data points. We're a services company. We obviously use data to back decisions, but again, we don't have this huge aggregate of data that we have to deal with. But with that being said, again, we're a software services company, so we deal with it, and we always have to be on the forefront with it. So I did want to just take 1 second to talk about like data analytics and BI. Two tools that have kind of always been at the forefront. I guess not always, but ever since I've really been in the space, have been Tableau and Power BI. There's always been kind of an AI piece to both of those tools. But obviously with those guys both being kind of the powerhouse of the BI space, they have to stay with the times. So they're pushing more and more, adding AI into the tools more and more as every day goes by. So even though Tableau, Power BI, or more again focus as just a BI tool, they have built in a lot of AI functions to do a lot of like data analysis and analytics. So if you're out there looking for, maybe you're already using Tableau or you're looking for Power BI, there may be AI tools out there for you, but at the end of the day, I don't think you need to ditch those to find something else. They're going to be adding more and more AI functions to those tools. So that they're still going to be the safe bet to go towards if you want a BI tool. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to go over today. We are right at the 29-minute mark. We always like to leave it open for questions at the end. Not sure if anyone has any. I haven't seen any come through chat, so I think we are all good. So
yeah, I think obviously a lot of this took off in November when ChatGPT came out and it kind of became mainstream and everybody started talking about it. But we've been using AI for a long, long time. Everything from smart homes to entertainment, business. There's all kinds of stuff going on out there. So it's exciting to see. The world's definitely going to change in the next, I'd say 5 years. Probably won't even recognize it. It'll be exponentially different, but exciting. So we'll keep an eye on it, keep everybody apprised, and hopefully have more of these conversations. So
definitely.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you next month.